week three is upon us, and despite what some people might say, it actually has quite a few matchups that are very intriguing, whether it's going to be a good game or you learn some things about certain teams. And Georgia and South Carolina is one of those games where you probably think that Georgia is going to win. And I think most people who think that on the Georgia side, and the only people that really think that South Carolina has a chance might be on the South Carolina side, but you'll still learn some things about both these teams. I think both teams have certain players that I'd like to see make some of sort of impact and improve. And I think the biggest one has to be on the Georgia side. And you see the number of playmakers they have. You kind of see them starting to step up and decide who's going to be their go-to weapons. But there's still plenty of season where other players can do that as well. I think the first thing that we look at is South Carolina's inability to run the football so far. They're averaging just 53 yards per game, and they're going against a Georgia defense that is extremely talented and extremely disruptive. So good luck with that. That's going to be tough. It's a South Carolina team that is still looking to find its footing offensively. I think Spencer Rattler has been decent at times, still has yet to throw a pick. And the rushing attack can only help them at this point. When you're under 53 yards, it's just bad. And now you're facing the best team in college football currently. That's going to be a tough matchup. And for South Carolina, there's still some things I'd like to see. I'd like to see Spencer Rattler make some big time throws against this defense. He gets an opportunity to face a Georgia team that will be extremely talented at all three levels. So finding ways to make plays. I don't think South Carolina can win this game, but I do think that there are certain things they can do to ensure that they keep it close for longer than they did last year. Last year, prove that they need to have a fast start. Georgia is going to score points. Georgia will get off to a good start. It's just a matter of what does South Carolina do to combat that, to equal that. Last year was 48 zip until 53 seconds left in the fourth quarter. So the game was never in question. The game was all Georgia the entire time. So that's going to be something you have to change. Spencer Rattler and then offense have to get going. The defense also has to do their part because Georgia is scoring 46 and a half points a game so far through the first two games. They're giving up just five a game. Now, yes, it's a small sample size, but this is a Georgia team that will score as much as you let them. And right now, South Carolina's defense isn't exactly elite by any means, but I think that there are certain players that will be interesting. And here's the thing: certain matchups, no, are not competitive in terms of being balanced and the talent level. There are plenty of players in this matchup. If you truly love college football, that will give you plenty to watch. I think Tonka Hemingway is one of the more intriguing players in the SEC at his position for South Carolina. So, what does he do to compete with arguably some of the best talent in college football at their positions? I think that Debo Williams is really fun to watch. DQ Smith. There are so many players for South Carolina that I would like to watch because there are certain guys that will make it onto the next level. They could be all SEC type players. And to say that matchups aren't worth watching for the casual fan. So for people saying that, I guess the casual fan, it makes sense. You don't have time to dive deep into certain matchups and whatnot, but there are still plenty of things that you could watch. And the casual fan, to me, I think they need to give themselves more credit. They are able to watch certain matchups. They are able to, you can get invested in almost any game. And Georgia, South Carolina is no different. This is a game that you can definitely get interested in. You can look into a deep dive. It doesn't take much. Look at a depth chart. Look at their stats. Look at who's in mock drafts. It doesn't take a ton of effort. You can literally just look at a depth chart and write down a couple numbers and focus on that. You kind of have an idea, even if you don't know, pull up a depth chart, watch the game, listen to the broadcast, talk about who's going to be good, who's going to be not. You can watch those and figure out who's going to be who, and you can invest your time into that. Now, obviously, if you have the time to do it, great. But to say that week three is a dud doesn't make any sense. This is really fun. Worst case scenario here, you find out just how good Georgia is. This is their first real test of the season, and it's not their hardest test, but it is a test nonetheless. You saw what they did last year, but they proved that they can be a big time team, and they obviously won the national championship. So now you're looking for that statement. This year's team is not last year's team. I don't care how many players they have back. This year's team is not last year's team simply for personnel. I'm not saying that Georgia isn't going to be as good as last year because right now all the signs say that they will. It's just that this year's team has nothing to do with last year's team. And now it's time for this year's team to make that statement. A player that's going to help with that is Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers, one of the best players in college football, the best tight end in the nation. 126 yards last year, 2 total touchdowns. He had a rushing touchdown against South Carolina. That will be a player that South Carolina focuses on. Georgia obviously has plenty of talent to get by if Brock Bowers isn't going to be the go-to playmaker, but Brock Bowers is still one of those players that commands most of the attention, and South Carolina will give him that, which opens things up for that offense. Turnovers will be a big key as well, because to me, if South Carolina is sticking with this Georgia team, they have to create turnovers. You have to find a way to get the football back to your offense because that offense needs all the possessions they can get. And maybe that's not even going to be enough. But right now, South Carolina sits at +2. Georgia is at +3. So both teams doing a good job of taking the football away from the opposition. And now they're trying to find ways to do that against each other. The quarterback position will be one that everyone watches. Spencer Rattler, obviously, good completion percentage so far, 698 yards, just under that 700-yard mark, 3 touchdowns, has yet to throw an interception. The North Carolina game wasn't exactly great. I think that he had a decent box score, but I think when you watch the game, you see that it wasn't exactly his strongest performance. This is a good opportunity to show that you still have the arm talent and you're playing against really good competition. Now, who's healthy at wide receiver probably plays a huge role in his success, but also keeping him upright plays a role with that too. So not all of it is on Spencer Rattler, but you do get an opportunity to see his talent. I think the biggest pressure in this game is on Carson Beck. And granted, maybe Georgia's talent overall just lets him get through without having to put in too much effort or too much stress on himself. But Carson Beck gets his chance to show us what he can do in a big game. Again, this is Georgia's first big test of the year, and you'll see just how good this offense can be if Beck shows out, especially in the first half. If he finds way, because here's the thing. Carson Beck doesn't have to really do a ton. He almost at worst has to be a game manager and just not turn the ball over. And that's the luxury he has. The luxury he can provide to his team is being just reliable and letting everybody else do their job. Because this Georgia team is stacked. This Georgia team is loaded. South Carolina doesn't have the talent to be able to compete with them, but you never know. That's why you play the games. You have an opportunity if you're South Carolina. Nobody expects you to win. Nobody expects anything from you in terms of keeping this close. So why not just let everything hang out? Why not let everything just take out every stressor you have or anything you feel in terms of pressure to perform. Just do whatever you need to do to win each rep. And maybe you have to pull out some trick plays. Maybe you have to get creative with certain looks. You have to do anything because right now Georgia is an absolute train and nobody is getting in their way. And when you look at the talent level, you could go through the entire Georgia roster and feel really good about it. I think the one position I'm curious to watch for Georgia is the running back position. You're seeing a couple of injuries impact this position, and that puts a little bit more stress on Kendall Milton. Kendall Milton's averaging 4.4 yards per carry right now. Not exactly the most dominant performance by this rushing attack, but it's still a very talented group. And now you have Kendall Milton potentially taking a bigger role in this offense. The defense obviously will do its part too. It's still one of the best, if not the best in college football. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. I think, if NFL teams are watching every single Georgia game, then you should probably do that too. You can get a lot out of watching Georgia play football. You can watch a number of big time playmakers that will play at the NFL, and they will make a tremendous impact in this game. South Carolina has their hands full for sure. Georgia's going to win this game. It's really just a matter of how much. And I've said that before and I was wrong. So if I'm wrong here, it would be a huge surprise. Georgia is on a mission this year, and not even a team like South Carolina is going to get in their way.